the Bertone automobile factory diorama. There is a manual for this diorama. It has lots and lots of information. All the information you would ever need on this diorama and how it works and what to do with it and what it's capable of. This diorama splits in half. You see down here, there's bolts hold it together, and there's one on the other side. So the diorama splits in half right down here, the middle of the shop area. And the reason for that was so you could take it apart and you could come over here and shoot pictures of just one section of the diorama. Before you take it apart, and there's the bolts on the other side, you have to remove this wall. And there's a screw, you unscrew this, which holds the wall together, and then you take that wing nut over there off, and you remove this back wall before you split the diorama in half, otherwise you'll crack this wall right in half. So it was designed that way so you could take pictures facing this way, you could take pictures facing this way, and use it to your advantage. But you may not want to do that. It's kind of a lot of work to take this thing apart. So you might want to just shoot your pictures like this and like this with the camera. And of course take pictures like this. So you really don't have to split it in half, but it was just an option. It's better that you don't split it in half because it's a lot of work. So, lighting, there's no lighting on this diorama, obviously. There's no roof lights or ceiling lights. So you have to supply your own light. And you just do that by putting light wherever you need it. There are a couple of things you can do to come up with some interesting lighting things. All these windows here are see-through windows, so you might want to do some sunlight effects using lights, however you want to do that. Also, this sliding door in the back, that was put there because logically I thought, well, if you're going to put cars into this jig, you might want to be able to exit them out the back besides going out the front. So I put that door in. So this sliding door, I left it so that you can use sunlight on this door, if you see what I mean. Light coming through the bottom of the door to give it an effect that it's daytime. So, the next thing I want to talk about is the layout and how it appears to cover a couple of photos. What we used was, we used some actual pictures of the Bertone factory. If you remember this picture, and you see the two red seats there and a buck in the back and the car up front. Well, that's the same scene you can replicate here. See those red seats? And everything is the same way. The back in the corner, if you notice, back here you see there's a jig. And back here, let's see if I can just barely see it, but right there is a sign that has yellow and black And also you have over here what looks like a rack maybe for metal. You also have a planishing hammer. So all those things are here. There's the planishing hammer, the red seats, the rack for metal, and there's that yellow and black sign thing, and there's the jig. And so when you put this all together and you get the right angle with the right cars, you can replicate that scene. Looks very realistic. Also, you have another scene that looks like this. Let's see if I can. On the left side, you see there's some stands and stuff, and then there's a kind of a blue-green cabinets, and there's also something hanging from the wall, and then there's shelves. Well, we've replicated all of that. The shelves, I decided that those things that are hanging were probably clamps. And there's the blue-green shelving and things like that. So when you set everything up just right, you can replicate this photo. The right car, of course. There's a man back there working. But you can actually, if you get everything positioned just right, I don't have everything positioned just right, but basically you can see what we're doing here. We can replicate that photo. So that's sort of the basis of how this diorama was designed. Now, everything in this diorama is movable except this sink is glued down the sink, and we glued down the air compressor so we could weather the area. So that air compressor is glued there, wired in with a conduit into the electrical, and this sink is permanent. But everything else is movable. So if you want to change the shop, the look of the shop, and where it all is, then you can do that. I decided after building it that they had to build a wood buck someplace, so I kind of created this area as the area to build wood bucks. So in the presentation, if you remember at GSL, we had a wood buck here, and we have sandpaper and some files and things that we're working on building a buck. And we also stored the wood here. Everything in this wood rack is glued down. So it's just a removable wood rack. And then we lean some wood up against it to give it some interest, visual interest. As a clipboard with a pencil, take an inventory, whatever. So, all of that is movable. Everything is movable except those two items. Let's go in here for a second. Talk about Mr. Bertone. Mr. Bertone. We had some pictures of him. What he looks like. And I sent those to none other than Ken Hamilton. And he created a very real looking Mr. Bertone. And Mr. Bertone actually is pinned. If you lift him up, there's a pin on his foot. And you can put him in there, close the door, you don't have to see him, or you can see him if you want to see him. However you want to do it. But Mr. Bertone is in part of this diorama. Okay. Now, also as part of this diorama, we want to make it look like somebody's doing something. So some of the parts that we could use, we have tools. These are the spare parts. The spare parts are in a box. We have tools that you can lay around different places. We have some boxes. You have a broom. You even have some beer bottles in case you want to throw a beer bottle somewhere. Have some bricks, have rags. We have some spare rags. And then we have some weird items that are hard to explain. They're just metal objects that you can scatter around the shop. Also, we have, I can get this straight here. We have spare wood. So here's the spare wood. Different sizes of lumber and sheets of wood. And then we have different levels of wood shavings. We have larger pieces, then we have some smaller shaving pieces, then we have even smaller, and then we have some sawdust that you can spread around. So all these things would make it more look very realistic with all the different kinds of wood. You don't want to leave it there. At that point, we also have the same thing for metal. We have different color aluminum, steel. Let's see, yeah. We have aluminum shavings. We have steel shavings that are different textures and sizes that we scatter around where you're grinding. And we have pieces of metal that maybe were clipped or sheared off of something. We also have some wire, very fine wire to use. So these things can be spread around the shop. Now the trouble with doing this, with the sawdust and with this metal stuff, once you put it down, it's difficult to get it out. Like if you wanted to sweep it out, you'd have to take everything out of the diorama, all the shelves and the workbenches and everything, and then clear out all this sawdust and all this metal shavings. So it makes a cleanup issue. You have to kind of be careful where you use that stuff and when. If you're sure you want it in your shot, if you're sure you want sawdust, then you lay that sawdust out as part of the scene. But then you got to clean it up if you want a scene without sawdust. So maybe take the clean shots first, and then as you progress to dirtier stuff, like where this guy is grinding on the car that's going to be in the jig, you want to scatter some metal filings around. I did that and I cleaned it up before I put everything in here. I did actually, for the GSL presentation, I had stuff scattered about and I cleaned it up before I redid it, but I had to take everything out, of course. Okay. Next thing I just want to show you is this metal rack. All this metal rack, all this metal is all loose. It's just laid in there in some more or less logical manner. And all this stuff up here is all loose. If you can see it. All this metal, it's all loose down here. So happens that this rack here that has the brass in it, I glued everything down. Not quite sure why I did that. Maybe I just thought that that wasn't going to be moved much. But then you want to put, some metal out that they're working on stuff. I want to throw some sheet metal on this workbench. But there it is, and you have in the spare parts, you have some extra metal. So you can have even more metal that you can scatter around the shop. I'm not going to talk about every single item on here, but although items on the workbenches are loose, I had to lay that down. And this, what do you call it? The bag of sand and the hammer, that's all loose. Everything on this workbench is loose. See, I forgot to put tools in this tool case. Need some hand tools in there. But all these hand tools are just scattered about. So, that's about it for the first video. This is the drawing table. This is a very cool drawing table that Mike Napoleon built. And I supplied this clay car here. But he's got lots of detail in this drawing table. Stapler, cellophane, pencils, and drawings. And it's got it written in Italian, S-E Segrotu, whatever, Segrotu, I don't know what that means. But I posted some more drawings on the wall so it would make it look like this is kind of a drawing center. But anyway, I don't want to get too much into every detail that's in here. There's just a lot of detail in this diorama. This is how to set up the jig. It'd be nice if we only had one car to put in here. If we have one car to put in here, then we can just glue everything down permanently and not have to worry. But somehow I got the impression that we had to put in several cars or different cars. So I made this jig with the ability to put different cars into it and adjust all these crossbars and cross members. So here's how it works. We have up and down poles here, and then we have these cross members. See if you can see that. And then we have these little down runners that connect to the car. Now, the way this was done, as I understand it, although I've never done it myself, but you put a car in a jig and you weld the car to the jig so that the car doesn't move. And then you weld the frame. You can use this to weld a frame with. I guess maybe they clamp things down now, but at least the pictures I have of this jig, it looks to me like they have welded the car to this jig. Tack welded it in several places. And that's what these little down runners here would be for, is to weld the car to the jig. So first thing, if you can see this, each one of these vertical poles can be removed. Or the bottom is cemented, but the top is flexible to be able to be removed. And what that allows you to do is to take these cross members out and move them up and down. See, I have it designed so these cross members have these little pins in them that are bent, and they move up and down the vertical members. And then they have little holes in them, these cross members. And what you do is you stick one of these little pieces into these holes, which you can attach to the car. And they're flexible, and they're movable. So what we'll do is we'll try to set a car in here and see how it works. You also have on the jig, you have a bottom piece that the car sits on. And of course, all these pieces have measurements. If you look, you'll see, just like in the photo of Bertone, they have all these different numbers. And these numbers mean something. Maybe they're millimeters. Maybe they're hundredths of a millimeter. I don't know what they mean, but they were there, so I did it. I replicated it. So basically, you just set this car here on this bottom part, which typically they would have welded it down, I'm sure. And then you move all these cross members up, so they're out of the way. And then the car goes in the jig, right? Just like that. And then with these little pieces attached to these cross members, you run it down over the car. So you see now on this roof part, it's been welded to the car. I don't know if you can see that exactly, but it looks like, here you go. It looks like it's been welded to the top of the car. And so you do the same thing with these next two here. You can put the right pieces in there that fit. It's pretty difficult to do this, but you make it look like those cross members have been welded to the car with these little pieces. And then you do the same for the front end. Move these down to where this attaches to the front end. And it looks like it's put into this jig and welded in the spot that they want. And you could put more cross members in if you want. And maybe one in the back. Might want to put one in the back or whatever. So then, now you have this car that's put into this jig, just like it fits in there. See, you can see how it's fiddly. I mean, it's difficult to get it to be all straight and perfect, so that all the cross members are right and all the little pieces, these little pieces, are all pointing to the car, and somewhere they're attached to the car. So you attach this jig using the cross members and these little pieces to it. You attach it to the jig. And of course, you're not going to do super close-up photos of this. It's in the shop, and it'll be, you know, 12 inches away, and so it looks like it's in this jig and it's perfectly aligned. But it takes some fiddling around with. It's a challenge. That's why if we had a car that we knew it was only one car going to be in this jig, you might want to glue these things all in place, if you get my meaning. The jig that I saw in the photo, all these pieces are movable like I have them. You know, you can move these pieces up and down. I put little wing nuts. I don't know if you can see the little wing nuts, so that you clamp it down where you want it, and then you attach it to the car. So it's kind of very realistic looking, but a real pain to set up and to make it look like the car is attached properly. So that's the challenge. The next thing I want to go over is the bulletin board. Now, there probably won't be very many shots of the bulletin board, because if you're taking pictures of this diorama and cars in here and being worked on, the chances of taking pictures close-up of this bulletin board are pretty remote. But nonetheless, I made it so that you could change the items on the bulletin board. Believe it or not, believe it or don't, those calendars, this calendar is pinned on there. See how it's loose? It's sitting on a pin. And so I made different calendars with different years, and you can hardly read what year it is. I mean, it's very difficult. But it's got different pictures of different ladies on these calendars. And you take this one off and put this one on. So I have like 1, 2, 3, 4, got 5 calendars that you can change. And those notes that are on there also can be changed. Pull them off and stick a new one on, glue it on. I think they're glued. I can't be positive. I can't remember. How did I make it so you could change them? I don't remember. I guess I just assumed that we would pull it off and glue it. Oh, this one's on a pin. It's on a little needle that's sticking out of the bulletin board. And so you pull that off and you poke on a different note. So it's just so you can change. That's glued on there. The clipboard's glued on there. And so is that, the title. And so is the motto of the shop rules. So a few of those things are glued on there. And all of this pencil and phone and notepad is all glued on too. So that's not going to change. So if you're going to take a picture of that phone, the pencil would be in the same place all the time. But like I said, I don't think you will take too many photos of the bulletin board. I just can't imagine that you would. Doesn't make sense because it's to the side. But there's a couple of good shots that you can take from this doorway. There's a picture in the, I don't know where it is in my manual, that has a very cool picture in it. I kind of lucked out and I took this photo, and it's really, really nice photo. Let's see if I can find it. It's worth showing if I can find it. I know it's in here somewhere. I guess I can't find it. Anyway, it's through this doorway right here that I'm showing you, and it's a picture of Bertone, and I have the light just perfect, and it's shaded just perfect, and it's a very, very cool picture of Bertone looking in through the window, and there's a car right here, and the shadow is coming from lights up in the ceiling like. So anyway, if you play around with it, you'll get it right. I found that really cool picture that I took almost by accident. As you can see, Bertone and a buck there and some shadows, some lights. Everything just came out really perfect for this photo, except maybe the windows in the back should have been consistent with lights coming in or something. But over here, you can see there's a cabinet from this side of the diorama, and it's through the doorway, and a red chair, and the buck, and Bertone, and the shadow. So if you play with shadows, and then there's this shadow. So the light's coming in this way from that shop, but the light in this shop is coming in this way. So anyway, the point is that if you play around with shadows and lighting, you get some really cool shots. Because this shot that I took looks really realistic to me, but most others don't. You know, though as I was photographing my diorama. So anyway, just wanted to show you that. The next thing we're going to talk about in the diorama is this vignette. This extra little thing that I built. When I was building Bertone, you had shown me this photograph of the Ferrari buck. And so I built a backdrop just for this picture. And here it is. It consists of a base and a set of windows, and then a piece in the back that I taped some structure on. Now this was done hastily. It really needs to be, it's the same picture twice, as you can see. I didn't have a printer that would print out a picture big enough, but we need to print out a picture that's 17 probably by 11. I don't know. Anyway, it looked like there was some, in this picture, there was something there behind them, and it might be a shadow, it might be a piece of something I crossed against the thing, but anyway, I use this piece of wood here. And if you look at this setting, you can replicate this. Let's see if I can show you. You can replicate it. Maybe like this. I don't know. It all has to do with angles, right? You take a picture just right, you can replicate this setting here. And that's what this is. That's what this whole setup is. And it's right under the bench, of the Bertone. Also, and we don't want to leave this out, this piece of wood that I built, excuse me here as I move this stuff around. This piece of wood also extends. You have to put it up on the right. You have to, it's the same exact height. But you see, it extends the perspective. If you want to take photos from further away and not lose the floor. Let's see if I turn it around, might match better. That's what this was. Actually, it wasn't really for this section so much as if you tear the diorama in half and then you put this up against that other piece over there, it extends the floor. It looks like the color is a lot different than the color of the floor on this side. Maybe I weathered the floor and I forgot to weather this. You know, I put a little dirt on it. I didn't put the dirt on here. But it was painted at the same time, so it's painted the same color. Anyway, that's just something to think about. So, that is it for the Bertone diorama.